Welcome, everybody. Dead quiet, thank you, somebody. Welcome, everyone. It was English novelist Jane Austen who said, "Distance is nothing when one has motive." Distance is nothing when one has motive. Now, she said this over 200 years ago, so she probably wasn't talking about modern technology. But there was a recognition from her that with purpose and curiosity, that the obstacles of distance could be overcome. Fast forward to the modern world today, where technology and transportation have made the world that much smaller. Her insight seems prophetic. On behalf of Boston College and the Carroll School of Management, welcome to the Boston College Chief Executives Club. There we go. I appreciate everyone coming out today. I know that there seems to be a little bit of sickness going through. I suspect it's related to yesterday being Fat Tuesday. For those of us who spent a lot of time in New Orleans, today has a very special place in our heart. I know that it means other things, important things to other people, but I'm greatly appreciative that you've come out here today. Now, business has been fighting the relevance of distance and location from their customer for centuries. In fact, in 1860, 165 years ago, a newspaper had this to comment about the impact of the Pony Express, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to get this wrong. But in 1860, a newspaper wrote about the Pony Express, quote, "As time and distance are annihilated by steam and electricity, space is no longer an obstacle in the path of human enterprise." Space and distance are annihilated by steam and electricity 165 years ago. And in today's interconnected world, with the advent of technology, data, and analysis, we've become all that much closer and connected, certainly in the business world. And I can't think of two companies that would exhibit that and display that more than the two CEOs who are going to join us on stage in just a moment. We're thrilled to announce that you should have in the program, 2 events scheduled for this spring. In May, we will be hosting Robert Ford from Abbott Laboratories. And in June, Bob Sternfeld from McKinsey & Company will be here. We're also thrilled that our first 2 dates for this fall have been confirmed as well. In September, we will be hosting Renee Jones from M&T Bank. And in October, Bob Bradway from Amgen will be joining us. So our lineup is set, and we will share those dates with you in the near future in the fall. Now for today's host, Niraj Shah, who serves as the CEO and co-chairman of Wayfair, one of the world's leading online retailers for home goods and furniture. In 2002, he co-founded Wayfair with Steve Conine off a business plan that they wrote at Cornell University. Started in Steve's basement, under Niraj's leadership, it has blossomed into a $12 billion in annual revenue company leveraging technology, logistics, and data analytics to dominate the home goods market. He and his wife have a deep commitment to our community. In 2017, the Shah Family Foundation was created by Niraj and Jill, investing heavily in healthcare, education, and community development. He serves on a variety of boards, including the Boston College Chief Executives Club, and I thank him for his support and friendship over the years. It was his friendship that brought us our keynote speaker today, Raj Subramaniam, who serves as the president and CEO of FedEx Corporation. With more than 30 years of industry experience at FedEx, Raj is but the second CEO in the company's history, following the footsteps of Frederick W. Smith, who coincidentally also started his company on a college campus, writing a paper for Yale University, identifying a need for overnight delivery with a hub and spoke system. That concept has turned into the company that Raj now leads, and he is responsible for spearheading its global transformation. Outside of FedEx, Raj is on several boards, including Procter & Gamble. And once again, I turn to my note cards because I want to get this correct. He is a proud 2023 recipient of the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Award. Am I reasonably close? How much did I destroy that? I'll take thumbs up as it was perfect. The award is the highest civilian award presented by the President of India to the Indian diaspora in recognition of outstanding achievements in India and abroad. He holds a degree in chemical engineering from IIT in India. He has a master's in engineering and an MBA from Syracuse University. Please welcome Niraj and Raj to our stage.
Thank you, Warren. Raj, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Niraj. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be back in Boston.
Well, it's been I've had the pleasure of knowing Raj for years, predating Raj becoming the CEO of FedEx. But I'll just do a couple more things on your bio that Warren didn't mention, because so you've been at FedEx for over 30 years.
Yeah, I started in 91, so 34 plus years, and only straight from college.
And was it clear you were going to be the CEO the whole time?
If someone had told me that this is the job I would be doing when I walked into, I didn't even know where Memphis was. I couldn't locate it on a map at that point. Then I would have told them that I had a much better chance to play for the Indian cricket team.
Totally. Well, FedEx, which I think, raise your hand if you're unfamiliar with FedEx. $87 billion, over $87 billion in revenue, over 16 million packages a day on average, 200,000 vehicles, almost 700 aircraft, and 500,000 team members worldwide. So incredible scale.
Yeah, well, I saw a few of them this morning.
Absolutely. And so, it's really exciting to have you here because I think, we're in a world with a lot of change, and I think you're running a company that's involved in so many things, seeing so many things, whether you think about change related to technology, change related to global trade, change related to, you're obviously a growing business. And so, where I wanted to start, though, is, a different change, which is, you've been running FedEx for 3 years, but you're only the second CEO in the company's history. But Fred's still very engaged in the business. And so, how do you manage your relationship with, a founder and chairman? In my experience, founders are very easy to work with, so perhaps that's the case.
I was just going to say, you should know.
While you're driving this agenda, because you have laid out an aggressive agenda, while driving an agenda forward and, keeping to the history of FedEx, but also looking to the future.
Well, it's a terrific question. Fred, for those, he's a phenomenal individual. Started this company in 1973 and then built one of the greatest global networks in place. And but we were very clear on the transition that was coming. So when back in 2019, I was appointed as a COO and then soon thereafter the board. So the transition was signaled way earlier. So there was no surprise whatsoever in terms of what's going to happen next. And we managed that transition very carefully. And his vision for this company is brought us to a level that the way I see it is, I quote Galileo, I can see far because I'm standing on the shoulder of a giant. And what is very much gone back to his entrepreneurial roots, and he loves network design and things like that, and he is constantly working on those kind of things. And secondly, really helping, he's a patriot at heart very much, and so he's very much involved in government affairs. So we have a great equation, and we work together. The transformation that we are underway on was really the next step in the journey. We had to do it anyway. And so this was just a natural sequence of what we had to do. So when we are looking at our network redesign as a transformation and the digital transformation that's underway, that's simply the next step in the journey. And it was very much orchestrated from the get-go.
And not everyone in the room is going to be quite as familiar with the strategy you've laid out and the details. So maybe could you share a little bit about the transformation around digital intelligence and the manifestation of that and the journey you're on?
Yeah. Well, let me just make one point on the physical, because a lot of people don't really. When Fred started this company, it was primarily in the air express space, meaning moving things overnight across the country. But then there was a huge ground parcel business that was, our competition had a 66-year head start on. So at the turn of the century, we had about 10% share, and our competition had about 80% share in the ground parcel business. So that was a 70-point market share gap. But because of the model that we have put in place and because of the work that we did, that gap has now shrunk to less than 10 points. And that's an unwritten story, to be honest with you, because that's one of the things that we took on, somebody who's got a very entrenched competition, to then erode away and then kind of catch up on that. So that's the first part of the journey. The second is the idea that FedEx moves $2 trillion worth of commerce through our system every year. And that's because we are the referendum on high-value supply chains around the globe, that we move high-value goods through our system every single day. We connect 2 to 3 million active shippers and to 225 million consumers. We are in that center of that ecosystem. And what I realized back in 2020 was that the data that we have, and more importantly, the insights that we have, is extraordinarily valuable. And we were not organized around that at that point, but we fundamentally changed the game over the last 5 years. The other thing that happened, of course, was the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, if I had said the words supply chain in this audience, none of you would care. In fact, you might politely escort me out of the room, because nobody, it was a domain of maybe the procurement manager, nobody cared. But the pandemic changed everything. And now supply chain is a conversation at the boardroom level, and so it's really changed another level. So we have now adapted our mission to make supply chain smarter for everyone, using the data and the insights that we have. So we have now, when you say everyone, it means us, starting with FedEx, and secondly, our customers, and then thirdly, our customers' customers, then end consumer. So that's the journey that we are on, and we build the infrastructure to do that. We're building solutions to do all these pieces, because what we are sitting on is just an incredible amount of insights about what goes on every single day. And day after day, I find more and more things that we know that nobody else really knows. So, and we can leverage that.
And so, so you're running a large business, and there's a daily rhythm to that, and then you're changing the business. So what are some of the challenges of balancing driving the change you want with the kind of need to run it?
Yeah,
at the same time?
That's unfortunate reality about that is there's no choice. It's like you have to do that. The good news is that the changes that we are envisioning, one on the physical side, was what's exactly what we needed to do. And I'll tell you the physical part in a minute, because when I told you about the part that we grew share on, and that business model was built upon operating two networks independently, our ground parcel business and the air parcel. There are two different networks. It worked just fine because 75% of our stops were business-to-business stops, meaning I'm stopping in this building, I'm stopping at that building. And it worked just fine. And but however, e-commerce took hold. So now we're serving Wayfair. 75% of our stops are now residential. So if you had two trucks coming to that building, and one delivering 10 packages and another delivering 6 packages, not much of an issue. But if I'm coming to your house and I'm having one truck delivering 1 package, the other truck delivering the 2nd package, now that doesn't work. So that's the reason why we had to go through this, or we're going through this transformation to now really combine the networks, because of emergence of e-commerce. So there's no choice, we have to do it. And but the team, I spent 3 hours last night with one team and 3 hours this morning, early morning with us with South Boston here. They're all ready, and it's just the culture of FedEx is so. I mean, I'm just so proud of it that we're going to get this done, and it'll improve our customer experience, and that's what we're after. The technological transformation is also very interesting because it's once people realize that what we are sitting on is really that much valuable, and that we can provide value to all our stakeholders accordingly. There's a whole energy around that we're going to set up. So how we set up structurally and how we manage all that, one is in C2, making sure that our technological framework and foundations, we modernize it, but then start to figure out new opportunities at the same time. So, it is a walk and chew gum at the same time for sure.
Makes perfect sense. All right, so I'm going to read this to get this correct. So you're a member of the President's Export Council. You're a board member of the Business Roundtable. You're a member of the U.S.-India Forum. You're a board member and the vice chair of the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum. And you're a board member of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's China Center Advisory Board. And you're the chair of the U.S.-China Business Council. So, at hazard a guess, you may know more about this than anyone else in the room. And so, obviously, FedEx plays a big role in global trade, and you're very, as a company, intertwined in a lot of different activity. When you think about whether it's China, Mexico, Europe, India, all these other key markets that you work in, you help move goods between them. I'm just curious your thoughts on the current trade climate and any observations you'd be willing to share.
Well, you just reeled off a few things, and
I got them off FedEx.com.
It's all true. It's all
printed
true.
it out.
It's all true. The reason I'm involved in all these things is not because it's easy to do, but it's because we need to do this. We have to have a voice in what's going on in the world right now at a very granular level and try to make sense of what's going on. So our supply chains are global in nature, and they're changing and dynamically every single day. And so we have to adapt to that. And being in a position to represent other companies and also then advocate the right policies that we think is right together, I think it's better than not participating in this game at all. So the three economies that I'm now intimately connected, obviously the United States, China, and India. And it's a very dynamic environment to be part of, for sure. I was just with Prime Minister Modi last week, 10 days ago now. I'm in China in a couple of weeks. So it's just the reality of life that we have to deal with these things. If you didn't have to worry about all this external environment, that would have been a good, great thing. Just focusing on what you have to do inside the company. But this is the reality that we have to now shape how the world changes.
And that the dynamic nature of the global trade environment, I tend to think of this as a positive for FedEx, given how deep FedEx is intertwined throughout the world. Is that the same way you would think about that?
Yes. So one of the things that, again, we talk about, the networks that Fred has created over the 50 years. Ultimately, what's the definition of a network? People understand it when they talk about telephone. You can pick up the phone, call anybody in the world. Similarly, a physical network, you can pick up something from any one part of the world and get it to any other part of the world. That's what we have now built. So now, as the supply chain trends are changing, and it's very dynamic, suppose the traffic is moving now from place A to place B to C or D, the chances that we are already in A, B, C, and D. And even if you're now in a new place, E, that's not there, it's easy to connect that E to the nearest network, and then the world is connected to that point. So having the scale of the network is a significant advantage. The second thing is that because of the fact that we are moving goods across the borders, we know from every country to every other country, for every commodity, what is the classification regime for those things. It's part of our daily day-to-day. So when things get tougher, when people have to do advanced calculus, there are only very few people who can do that. A lot of people can do base algebra, but when things get really tough, there are only a couple of companies who can actually do that.
Yeah, and it's, I'll tell you, as a company who does ship goods cross borders and all the complexity of the classifications and the codes and you have all the different jurisdictions, and there's no question that it's very and we're a reasonably large company, and it's still very complicated. And so I can imagine your customers do rely on you for tremendous help.
Yeah, no, I think, and plus, it's one thing when everything is static, and so everyone has got their own processes all set. But imagine in this environment, one country to every country to every other country to buy commodity, and they're changing. That's a very dynamic issue that, again, that's why we would be able to make our customer supply chain smarter with much more technological integration.
Yeah, and so to that end, I think most folks are very familiar with FedEx in the sense that as a business, I can send packages to my end customer or to another business. As a consumer, I can walk into the FedEx, the office store, and I can, ship a package, or I can get some assistance doing whatever I need to do. One of the things I think about is as Wayfair, we've been very excited by, and it's helped drive our business forward, some of the collaborations we've done that basically take advantage of digital tools and solutions that facilitate, obviously, the logistics network that we're able to, the logistics benefits we're able to create for our customers by working together. So to your point, could you share some examples of sort of some of the ways in which you're able to work with different companies to create supply chain solutions that perhaps folks wouldn't just, it's not the basic kind of package just showing up their door that maybe they're accustomed to?
Well, 5 years ago, we closed one of the largest customers, and, great. I talked to a supply chain officer on the company, congratulations, this, that, and the other thing. And then finally, before I hung up, I said, can I get your phone number of your CTO? And he said, why? I said, just trust me. Just give me the number. So they introduced me to the CTO, and their CTO gave me 25 minutes, for a phone call. Who gives you 25 minutes? I don't know, but I got 25. So I got 25 minutes. That turned into 90 minutes and more. And ultimately, it was basically creation of a common data platform, whereby at the end of the day, when somebody goes on their site and orders something on the site, that information instantly passes to FedEx. And when that happens, we get the information 12 hours before we would normally have gotten it. And 12 hours is a lifetime of FedEx. So that allows us to make our supply chain smarter. Oh, by the way, when that information comes to us, we can then look at the latest in terms of network conditions, weather conditions, and advise them to say, all right, to get that delivery by Thursday, you need to fulfill from this location, because based on the information that we have of their inventory. So we make their supply chain smarter. And thirdly, because of the deep learning models that we have built, we are able to improve the predictability of that package arriving at the consumer's doorstep. And then we basically say, okay, it's going to arrive by between 2 and 4 p.m. on Thursday, for example. And that's got multiple value added from that perspective. So when we did that, we made supply chain smarter for us, our customer, and the end consumer, and off of a common platform that we built. From there began our journey of improved visibility, improved predictability, and then we created now a digital twin of FedEx. And we launched an FDX platform to kick off last year. So we're just moving in this direction of making, these interactions. I have to make this one point very clear. The digital twin exists only because of the physical. I'm not a technology company. I'm a supply chain company and a supply chain technology company. And the physical changes that's happening is now reflected on a digital twin, and we're getting much, much more predictive in how we're moving it. And because of that value, because of the physical, now I'm able to do that. A lot of companies, technology companies, just ride on the surface. They scrape the data of the internet, 10 people in a basement, and create some value. But we now have the detailed intelligence that we're going to leverage. So that just gives you a flavor. We have, now a series of solutions, some in beta mode, but for healthcare customers, for e-commerce, retailer, and all the way around. And it's just an exciting journey. We're just getting started, to be honest.
And so now, if you kind of flip it around, the way you're able to do this is by having an amazing team. So you have 500,000 team members, in all the different roles throughout the world. That's quite a big team. So when you think about inspiring them, communicating them, but also getting them to understand what's next and where you're headed, what are the ways you do that, and what have you found to work the best?
Yeah, no, this is very, very critical. We are a service business, and just imagine 500,000 people around the world doing just enough not to get fired, versus 500,000 people going above and beyond the call of duty to deliver an outstanding experience. That's the difference between success and failure. And Fred recognized that from the very get-go, and that's where he created the cultural philosophy of FedEx, which he coined as PSP, take care of your people, they deliver an outstanding experience for your customers, which generates profits for the company, which you reinvest back in the people. This unending circle that we call PSP has been since the founding of FedEx, and it's not going to change. And Fred and I talk about all the time is that we may buy companies, we may hire new people, we may get new technology, but the core culture doesn't change. I spent 3 hours this morning at South Boston Aero Station. It's extremely self-evident. It's palpable. And the other thing that people ask me is that, how difficult it is to do business in different countries around the world where the cultures are so different. I get the chance to travel the world constantly, and I see our folks. And I got to say that the language of the country may be different, but the language of FedEx is the same. This is something that we have accomplished over time, which we don't even know we had accomplished, so to speak. It's kind of happened in situ, but it's something now we have. And something we pride ourselves on, and something that's very cherished within FedEx, and that's something we will carry on from going forward.
When you first became CEO of FedEx, it was during the pandemic, and you mentioned the pandemic earlier. It's changed a lot. One of the things about the pandemic I think everyone remembers is operating a business through the pandemic was, very challenging, very difficult. And this would be, you'd been at FedEx a long time, but you're in the new role. So, what was your, how'd you embrace that, engage in that? Your leadership style, how'd you find it fit the moment as you worked through that?
Well, hopefully the pandemic is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. It was just an incredible time because, yes, the volumes screamed through the roof during the time. Our business grew $25 billion in 2 years. And, but when you're moving atoms, you need facilities, you need trucks, you need planes. I mean, you can't just move it through osmosis. So we had to kind of calculate and start to move really, really fast in putting new facilities and all these things because the volume just went through the roof. Secondly, the global system of the planes and trucks, it's a choreographed system. So different countries started putting different kind of regulations around COVID. And I mean, every day it was like, you can imagine a network and suddenly you change this over here and the whole thing gets impacted. So it was almost on a crisis mode about, okay, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that? How do we deal with that? So there was a different sense of urgency, drive. Again, we leveraged the FedEx team members and the culture we had to really put together this program. So, it really was incredible, very tough, but there was a lot of growth. But the other part of it was the post-pandemic. It's almost like one fine day, the light bulb got switched off. And then, if you look over a 4-year period of time, you would say, well, growth of $20 billion sounds great. But it's like you grow 25 and come down 5. Now that's a whole different ballgame. So that's the journey that we have been through, and I'm just proud of our team to have been through this kind of cycle, and never before in the history of the company, and hopefully never again, that kind of cycle that we're going to have to deal with. But it's been a significant challenge. I relied on my team significantly. I got a very good team, And we just kept the faith. And, directionally, we knew we'll get it done. So there was definitely a belief that we'll make it happen.
And just a couple, we'll do a few more questions, then we'll open it up to the audience. But one thing that occurs to me is, like, again, everyone has an experience in how they know FedEx, but a lot of it has to do with, the packages they receive or the packages they turn over. You're based in Memphis. Memphis, not a very big city, but one that's been built in many ways by FedEx. Can you just take a couple minutes and describe the operation that's in Memphis itself? Because I think just describing some of it and how it comes alive overnight is
Well, to start with, FedEx was founded in Memphis, and it started off as an air express company, like I said. So the hub, the main super hub for our air operations is in Memphis. Now, of course, we have multiple hubs in the United States. We have hubs around the world, but Memphis was the first one. And every night, 150 airplanes come in and take off in a matter of 4 hours. And, hundreds of thousands of packages. It's just something to see, really. And a lot of people come to Memphis to see Graceland. I say, yeah, go to Graceland, but let me also give you a tour of the FedEx hub. Maybe you'll find Elvis there too. But it's a fantastic operation every single night, and how we deal with that. But then now, as we have now moved into the ground parcel business and our trucking business, we now have our ground hub close to Memphis and also our freight hub. They're also worth going because they're now most modern, highly automated, and a lot more volume goes through the ground package because it's the air versus ground. So there are 3 distinct hub operations that again, I'm very proud of it. So I would be happy to give anyone here a tour. It's just it's something you have to see, to behold. And the other thing I tell people is, actually, you can see the world's commerce go through this. I mean, I've been trying to describe to people, all you do is look at what packages go through the belt, and you can see the world's commerce literally going through the system.
So, we obviously ship millions and millions of packages with you a year, and they effectively all go ground. But I always describe the air operation because it's like a more tangible for folks, planes landing, you empty a plane out. Because I feel like that air hub, it's sort of like, 9 p.m., 10 p.m., people are having coffee, it's just getting going. 11, 12 picks up steam, like peak is probably like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. By like 4 a.m., it's sort of like
No, so the way, well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to serve your business, and we are very thrilled to be partnering with you in your success as we go forward. And then we move, as you said, most of your traffic on the ground. But on the air side, what happens is that there's a very short period of time between, let's say, 10:45 and 1 o'clock where most of the airplanes come in. I mean, there are still planes coming in, but there are 150 of them. And then it has to be unloaded and sorted. And then, so we have a sort clock, which, they have a sort downtime. It'll be 2:06 or 2:03 or it'll be by the minute, that clock is watched. And to be the sort being down, and then the reverse happens, loading back the planes. And by about 4:30, the planes are gone. And so it's a very intense operation in a very short amount of time. And if you're in the hub at the middle of the night, you can watch them come like fireflies out of the sky, And if you just sit in the control tower and watch it, it's just kind of a fascinating sight.
All right, so we're going to switch it. I'm going to ask you a few questions, a little more on the personal side, and then we'll open it up. So the first one: if you were not the CEO of FedEx, what would you be doing?
I think cricket. Cricket player.
So once you became CEO, you realized you can do anything. So you're like, hey.
Yeah, I can do cricket.
All right, 3 words that define you.
Well, I think curiosity would be one word. Maybe servant leadership. I think that's hallmark of FedEx, and then maybe strategic.
Who do you look up to the most?
Well, the 2 people that comes to mind, one is my dad growing up, and then second is, of course, Fred, who I spent so many years working together with. And with Fred, it's not just CEO school, it is history school, it's geography school, it's a perspective that's incredible.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a break from these questions. That maybe reminds me of something. So this is the first time I met Fred.
Yeah.
Because I was talking to someone else at FedEx and said, have you met Fred? Haven't met Fred. Oh, you got to spend some time with Fred. So Fred was going to be in Boston.
Yeah.
So we went to dinner and we got talking. And what I realized is we talked a little bit about the business and Wayfair and FedEx. But he has so many interests. We started talking about all kinds of things, right?
It's across the board. That's the perspective, yeah.
Yeah, and he's very entrepreneurial.
Yes, always.
And so one question I have is, as FedEx has gotten so large, how do you balance the entrepreneurial zeal to kind of innovate and do different things, maybe try new things, enter new business lines, with the goal of kind of a large company being more predictable, rigorous planning, financial precision? Because I could see there's still, FedEx has the DNA where I could see that tension being one of the
Oh, no, 100%. So there's, that's the entrepreneurial spirit is ongoing. And even though we're now a much larger company, so there are enough bets that we take. One of the great things about Fred, one of the things he told me is like, why don't people see things that are not right in front of their faces? I said, that represents about 99.99% of the people. There are only some people who can see around corners. And when you have that vision, but the most important thing is, would you bet, on that vision? And that's what we do. And so we take bets. Some of them work, some of them don't work, but we try, and it still goes on. It's just all the things we just talked about. We are pushing the edge on a lot of things, yeah.
All right, a few more quick ones. Biggest pet peeve?
Doing the same thing over again. If I do it once, hopefully it's done.
What lesson do you wish you had learned earlier?
Oh, I think I wish that growing up, I had a bigger lens or bigger vision. And it's just, then you could, I think I just was too narrow when I was, when I was growing up as to what could be done, what could be accomplished.
So that's in great contrast to my children who are confident they actually know everything.
Yeah. Well, when you're an immigrant coming to this country with $2 in your pocket, you're like worried about the next dollar. So there's absolutely not that. So.
What's the greatest piece of advice you've ever received?
Have fun. Yeah, it's the one question I kept asked. Are you having fun? And that's good. I mean, that's if you're not having fun, you should not do what you do. You should not do what you do.
Right. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
If I could see the future, especially now.
Yeah, clarity is always a welcome thing. Yeah. All right. One word that defines the future of FedEx?
Unlimited.
All right. And then the last question I have, but certainly not the least, after Way Day, what is your favorite holiday of the year?
I don't have one, sorry. But let's call it Way Day.
All right, I want to open it up for questions others may have, just to give folks a chance. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and there's, I think, microphones. I think there's one over here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Two-part question. On your ground business, what percentage of the business is run by employees versus contractors? And then the second part of the question is, how do you maintain culture with the contractors?
Yeah. On the ground business, the pickup and delivery operations is done by the contractors, and the operations on the hub and sorting are done by employees. And, we have built this over the last 25 years so that the FedEx culture is, of course, it's a contractual relationship. And that, we pay very particular attention to making sure that they're rewarded for the right kind of behaviors that reflect the FedEx culture.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. It was really empowering and inspiring to know about you. But I want to take you back to 1991 or 1992 when you have finished your MBA. So if not working at FedEx, imagine you have finished your MBA today. You have seen a lot of technologies evolving, a lot of things growing, especially the AIs and .com bubbles and something like that. What would you see yourself doing today if you have graduated out of your MBA today?
Well, first of all, back in 1991, when I graduated with an MBA from Austin, Texas at that point, it was a pretty bad recession. right after the war, and I didn't have a green card, and there were absolutely no jobs available. And I had been to 200 or 300 job applications, and nobody would take me. Even if I get an interview, I'd get the second interview. The minute they figure out that I don't have a green card, you're out. And so I had already graduated in June, no money, and now in August, I was just about trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. I don't know what I was going to do next. When FedEx came to campus, who in the world comes to campus in August? I don't know, but it was a stroke of fortune that FedEx came to campus. And so this gentleman, I got an interview, which is another story altogether, and I walk in the door, and I was so frustrated. I walk in and basically said, listen, I don't have a green card. I don't want to waste your time or mine if that's going to be a problem. And these two guys looked at me and said, son, let's first figure out what it takes to do a job at FedEx, and let's worry about the paperwork. And in a week later, I had a job. So at the lowest level in the company. But so that's what happened then. And so I'm grateful that FedEx took a chance on me after about 300 companies had rejected me. Today, you ask the same question to me, I mean, the whole premises will be off because, when I left India at that point in time, looking for opportunities, I would never leave India right now. Because there's so much going on in the markets over there that there's in the technology fields, or there's so many opportunities right now. So that's what I probably would never have made it here. Yeah.
Great to hear from you. Thank you so much. I teach communication skills, and one thing I do is I use the FedEx logo as a part of my exercise to find the hidden arrow.
Yeah.
What else is hidden at FedEx that we should know about?
Well, there is a story about that. We used to be called Federal Express. And in the early 90s, as we went global, saying Federal Express around the world was getting increasingly difficult. So at that point, I was very much junior in the company. The authorities that decided that FedEx would be the brand to go, which is a masterstroke. And we hired this agency called Landor Associates to put the logo for FedEx. So they put this logo in there with the arrow hidden. And oh, by the way, they didn't tell anybody about the hidden arrow. And so it was a meeting, as the legend goes, and they presented the FedEx logo. It looks beautiful, big, bold, purple, orange. And there was only one person in the whole entire room who noticed the arrow. It was Fred. He was the only one who noticed the arrow. So I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. If you look at the FedEx logo, you'll see that hidden arrow. So someone said, why don't we put an outline on the arrow? And they're like, no way. In fact, it's a avenue of discovery over time. And people figure it out there's a discovery there, and then you'll never unsee it afterwards. So we left it like that. It's been a masterpiece, and it's been a hit. And so I think it reflects. I was talking earlier, about marketing. I grew up in marketing, and so it's been a fun thing for me to carry on. The hidden thing really is our culture, really, and that's who we truly are. Is our FedEx culture.
Okay, I think there's one.
Got a lot of voice. First of all, thank you for being here today. As someone that's super, busy, I would imagine, with your day-to-day, I'm always interested in hearing how someone like yourself structures their day when they get up in the morning. The importance of me time. Like, how do you fulfill, those emptiness times of the day?
Well, this is something that, honestly, I took over 3 years ago, roughly now, as CEO. And I was the COO role, and actually I was doing 90% of the job. So I said to myself, and Fred said, you ready? I said, yeah, I'm ready. This sounds, it's like, okay, 10% more maybe, and it'll be good. I was completely wrong. The number of stakeholders who came in through the woodwork, the minute that CEO title landed, there was no preparation for me for that. I mean, it was a bit much. And so it took me a while. It was the first 6-8 months was very, very, very stressful from that point of view. Plus, the business itself was going through this turbulence that I talked to you before. It was an incredibly tough time. It took me a while to take a whole step back and said, what is my job? And what is my real job? So then I kind of started laying that out, at least in my own head. Drive the strategy of the company, create a framework for execution, not execute everything, create a framework for execution, represent the company well externally. There were 3 or 4 or 5 things like that. And I zeroed out my calendar. I literally zeroed my calendar and basically said, start putting things in there. If it doesn't fit in those 4 things, don't put it on. So ultimately, that discipline, I'm not great, but it's definitely gotten better. And I find myself saying no a hell of a lot these days. So, that's an unfortunate part of the thing. But I think you have to have some kind of North Star about what your job is, and they have to manage accordingly. And for me, sports is my only go-to, really, at the end of the day. And so I play sports, and that's kind of where I have to get my off time. So, yeah.
It's okay, but Mike, just for context, my name is Jacob Cock. I serve as the head of school at Zavarian, which is a private all-boys Catholic school just outside of Boston, serving boys in grades 7 to 12. I actually have 2 questions. My first is, when you think of the relationship between education and industry, what are some of the essential components associated with that relationship in your view? And the second question is, my teenage daughter, as I was walking out today, ordered some shirts from Wayfair. They're coming FedEx. She's wondering if you could help with them. Delivery to our
The second one is very easy. It's coming. The first one, you're right. I think it's this is a between education and industry. This is a constant change, because especially now that it's very dynamic and changing. So I think if from an educational institution's perspective, I think the more and more you're really tied in to what the industry requirements are and how they're changing and being a little bit ahead of the curve, that's always very important. When I studied engineering and I went to master's in engineering, one of the things for me that I did not have, absolutely did not, was any kind of communication skills, none. So now I'm in the workplace, and I have to present to 6 people, I couldn't do it. I mean, my knees were knocking. I mean, it was like, so there are, I think my only point of mentioning that is that the skill sets required to succeed in industry are changing. And in fact, sometimes people don't even know exactly what they want. If the educational institutions get a little bit ahead of the curve and try to figure that out, because you need some pipeline time to make that happen, and of course make some judgment calls. We can't be right all the time. That'll be very important. Otherwise, if you stay in the same place, the world is moving on. So, yeah.
Right, I think we have time for one more question, or we're?
We have one more.
All right, we'll take the one last question back.
Thank you. Also, a little bit of context. My name is Bill Weir. I work at a local organization, Mass Challenge. We support small businesses that run our corporate partnership program. I'm interested, really, from both of your perspectives, like how you think about working with startups that might represent novel technologies to help you continue to grow.
Well, for me, it's very clear now, because since, especially now that in the journey that we are on in the digital space, and the platform that now we have created, and actually a supply chain ecosystem that we are now creating, we are very much in the game about looking at startups in the space that can add value. Which is not, I wouldn't say this was exactly the case 4 or 5 years ago, but now it's different. And we have actually invested in multiple at very early stages, or some little, more, and experiment to see what value can add. It's only going to go bigger over the next 5 years, because we're going to have this incredibly rich supply chain insights, and then value add can come from so many different sources, but leveraging the bigger ecosystem. So short answer to your question is very interested, and we will, this is already happening and more to come.
I'd say something similar in the sense that we've always, my background is as an engineer, my co-founder's background similar, and we've always been focused on technology as a big differentiator. We spent the last few years prioritizing, we have a large technology organization, but we spent the last few years prioritizing decoupling all our systems and replatforming them. And now we're fortunately on the other side of that. So now all of a sudden we can focus on ways to leverage technology to drive ourselves forward. So we've actually, in the recent past, been able to start working with a lot of early stage companies again. And there's a lot of exciting innovation and opportunity there. So we of course try to do some of our own things, but we actually partner with a lot of startups as well. And we definitely have pushed to be broad-minded that way versus sometimes technologists want to build everything themselves, and our view is that's not the most productive way to go forward. There's times for that, but there's a lot of times, majority of times, where working with others makes sense.